Because I have just 20 days until the end of 100 days of discipleship. I know, don't cry, don't cry. Just 20 days and 100 days of discipleship will be over. I want to share with you some of my most important thoughts, life changing thoughts on discipleship. Today, I want to kill two birds with the stone. I've been having a bit of guilty conscience, remembering that I've not completed my series on church history. But we have just 20 days. So I want to touch on important things. But I figured out a way to kill two birds with a stone, to tell you a bit of church history and tell you one of the things that are burning in my heart, especially when it comes to discipleship. And I want to start with the story of the Catholic Church, and I'll tell you why that's important. I'm going to talk about the history of the Catholic Church, the history of the Protestant Reformation. Listen, you don't know church history if you don't at least have a vague idea of the Protestant Reformation. And I want to talk about the pros and the cons of it. Because listen, when we look at it, usually we only see the advantages of it. But I think that the Protestant Reformation might have caused a lot of problems that we still haven't figured out how to resolve. And if you stay to the end, you will see what I'm saying. Well, I want to start with what I would call one of the most popular texts in the history of church history. And that is, or let me say, in church history, you get what I'm saying? That is Galatians chapter 3, verse 11. The B part of it simply says, the just shall live by faith. And why is this a landmark text? It is because this is what sparked a new light and a new revelation in Martin Luther and in the church at large. All right. So prior to this time, we are talking about an era where the Catholic Church had so much power, more power than you can imagine. If you think they have a lot of power now, wait till you realize that once upon a time they owned 1/3 of the land in Europe. 1/3. This made them the most powerful economic institution in the whole world. And also, as a political institution, you have to understand that they were the successors of the Roman Empire, and they claimed authority over the kings of Europe. Not just that, they were involved in social services, education, alms to the poor. They were involved in baptism at birth, involved in when a person died. And then most importantly, because the Bible was written in Latin at the time, only the priests usually could speak Latin. And so they had so much power. There's so much to say about that, and I'm going to come back to that. So here comes a man named Martin Luther, and I need to make the differentiation, not Martin Luther King Jr., but Martin Luther. All right, they're two different people in two different eras in history and have different contributions. All right, so this young man was going to die. There was a lightning that he was afraid was going to strike him, and then he made a vow to God that if he survives, he'll be a monk. So when he survived, he went to the monastery. All right, and like many of us, he he was overwhelmed with the consciousness of his sins, and he would go to the priest and confess incessantly. He was doing those confessions all the time until he came across this life-changing text that the just shall live by faith. One of my favorite history channels telling the story put it this way. They said, so that life-changing text pointed out to him that salvation doesn't come by prayer, fasting, vigils, pilgrimages, the relics given to the poor, sacraments, or any such thing. Simply by faith, or in Latin, sola fide. All right. So this was a life-changing moment for him. And then this spiraled to him eventually writing what is popularly called the 95 Theses. 95 sentences that were rebuttals to some of the popular Catholic Church religions and doctrines and dogma. Now, let me play devil's advocate before I progress. A lot of people think that the Catholic Church was consciously trying to withhold people from the truth because Bibles were not really popular at the time. Only the elites and the priests had Bibles at the time. Was this a deliberate attempt at the Catholic Church making sure that people stayed ignorant? Maybe not, or not so much. We're talking about an era where, before the printing press, where one of the most luxurious items in your house, apart from maybe horses or anything will actually be books, because most of them were, number one, handwritten. Not most of them, all of them were handwritten, because there was no printing press, and they were written on maybe papyrus or even animal skin. So just imagine, even books get torn. How much more materials that fragile? So they literally had to be preserved. All right. And so, just by that, until there was a technological solution to that, a technological answer to that problem, it literally had to be preserved. And unfortunately, only the elite had access to these materials. Well, that might have contributed to the excesses of the Catholic Church, maybe coming up with all these indulgences and all these other excesses that went unchallenged, because many people were ignorant at the time. And of course, like I said, the Bible was in Latin at the time, and that was not the language that the laity could speak at the time. So that might have contributed to that. But long story short, well, there were excesses, and Martin Luther stood against it, and this led to a great revolution. I want to say this, and I've taught on this quite a number of times, that by Kairos, all right, this coincided with the advent of the printing press. So there were many other people before Martin Luther who stood against the errors of the Catholic Church, but they didn't go viral. So why did Martin Luther go viral? Because it was because at his time, just 20 years before, the printing press was invented and became popular. So his writings actually spread, all right, and then also there were more demand for Bibles. Bibles could be printed, and that was what contributed, to this viral move. Okay, what are the advantages of the Protestant Reformation? I have some lists here just so that I can make this as short as possible. Number one, the accessibility of the Bibles to the laity or to the layman. All right. Number two, increased literacy amongst the people. Now, this is one thing a lot of people do not know, that um, the culture of Bible reading actually contributed to global literacy. All right. So a lot of people, because they wanted to know the Bible for themselves, they were reading more. And because they were reading more, they became more literate. Number three, it even contributed to the growth of printing press. Just in case you do not know, the Bible is and remains the best selling book in all of history. All right. But most importantly, especially as it pertains to church spiritual culture, the revival of orthodoxy. All right. The church was restored to original simplicity. Original simplicity, which was important. Now let's talk about, yeah, there were other advantages, the separation of church and states. Well, in some context, you may call that an advantage. Yeah, that's a conversation for another day. All right. So now let's talk about the disadvantages of the Protestant Reformation. Just listening to me so that you understand the heart of what I'm saying. The Protestant Reformation is one of the biggest blessings in church history. I mean, just imagine we're still paying indulgences. Just imagine, for some reason, that even after the advent of the printing press, that culture and that dogma of only one person of the religious elite having access to the Bible still continue. There's every possibility it might have continued, but for the Protestant Reformation, I mean, it's a big blessing to say the least. All right. However, when you look at the extremes of religious freedom, I mean, within Christianity, I'll give an example. And some of you might have heard me say this before. I went for Bible school, a Bible training course, and during the break, I went to the loo, I think to the restroom or something. And when I came back, there was this young guy. You could tell that he was an undergraduate sitting on my seat. So I said, sorry, you're on my seat. And he said, that's too bad. I'm like, who is this young, spoiled brat? Excuse my language, And upon further investigation, I heard that he was a um, campus fellowship president, you know. And with due respect, thank God for campus fellowships. My story will not be complete without at least some structure, a similar situation regarding that. But are there extremes? Yes. Yes, there are extremes. Because now you have 16-year-old, 17 years old, 18 years old being called Papa, and then you have um, fellow students washing their clothes, cooking for them, and all of this. You see, let me tell you something. It doesn't really matter the age. Anyone who has been a blessing to you spiritually deserves some level of recognition and honor. You understand what I'm saying? Listen, I know what it's like um, to work very hard, to be experienced, to be helped of God, and really be engraced, and people look down on you because of your age. It's literally in the Bible. Paul told Timothy, let no one despise your youth. So there's another extreme there. But listen, when you look at some of the horrible things that have happened, I mean, you can literally just get some special revelation. Gather a following, especially in the social media era. If you're charismatic and you know how to phrase your sentences, and you gather a following, and you don't have to be accountable to anybody. In fact, that small sect can even be seen as something exciting, something other, something holy and new. Like, because you're the minority, you're against the establishment, and just once in a while throw in some jabs against popular men of God, you're going to trend. But I'm just looking at the church the way it is now. And make no mistake, any pastor who listens to what anybody has to say is just being nice. He's just being nice. If he chooses not to listen, what are you going to do? We don't have the structure to keep anybody accountable. We don't. And guess what? Once upon a time, we did. Listen, I'm not wishing we went back to that. I'm just saying, well, what is the replacement? What is the replacement? Because I'll just tell you some things in history. First and foremost, it is a historical fact that after the Reformations, there were wars and persecutions that were tied, at least to a large extent or a fair extent, to the Reformation. Read up on the French Wars of Religion and the English Civil War. At least in parts, it was contributed by strife between Protestants and Catholics. This is a known fact. This is a known fact. The rise of religious intolerance, especially in some areas, all right, where the minority were Catholics, the Protestants oppressed them. Where the minorities were Protestants, the Catholics oppressed them. These were known and established facts in history. You had a lot of expulsions, a lot of forced conversions. All these things happened. And then, of course, the further fragmentation of the church, micro reformations. You know how all these things have a ripple effect. It's just normal human behavior. When there's a great movement, if you're not careful, to be hijacked. In this part of the world, Nigerians know that when there was the NSAS protests, some people came with malicious intent and hijacked the thing. All right. And similar things happen, all right, in the church. But before I even talk about people with malicious intent, even the further reformations, so after the Lutherans, because of Martin Luther's movement, there was another group again, the Calvinists came, and then the Anglicans came. And just in case you don't know how that started, I'll tell you. King Herod VIII wanted to divorce his wife, and the Catholic Church wouldn't let him. So conveniently, he broke away, started the Anglican Church, and then, he had a new conviction on, that permitted him to do that. And I'm saying this respectfully. It's just history. Do you understand me? You may read some other sources that have a different perspective, but this is the general consensus on that. And then you had Baptists, and then the Methodists, and then the Anabaptists, and then few years down the line, we have close to 6,000 denominations. 6,000 denominations. You have people, I heard of a lady who went to a church, a so-called church, and halfway through the service, the pastor brought out a lamb and brought out knife and was sacrificing the lamb in the church. Blood sacrifice. Now, all you can do, and again, I'm saying these are the disadvantages. All you can do, because there is no central accountability, you have to depend on everyone's discernment. And guess what? That doesn't always help. That doesn't always help. A lot of people have gone to places that are presided over by magicians, thinking they were going to churches. These things happen. And all I am saying is, listen, that radical aspect of us that already has a propensity to rebel against authority, when we hear stories like this, our blood is just hot. Yay, yes, they oppress us, and all of that. And why am I telling you this? I'm not just telling you this for the sake of history. I am seeing something like that brewing in the church. Brewing. It has become fashionable to throw jabs against top men of God. And listen, if you think I am advocating for anybody, you know very little about me. Go and do your research. Go and do your research. There was a video I did that went viral because I was talking about maybe the excesses on generosity and tithing, and someone said, "Oh, he's talking about this. He's talking like this popular man of God." With due respect, a lot of these guys are newcomers. I've been talking about this thing since. I've been talking about this. Maybe social media is more popular now. We have maybe a better media team. It's getting more viral. Go and check the archives. Go and check what I thought about tithing in 2014. Make no mistake. Do you understand? I have my own journey. I'm not claiming to have always known the right thing, but I made the switch much earlier than many people, With due respect. With due respect. But you see this thing where whether it is matters of tithing or in matters of clergy and our involvement in speaking truth to power, talking politics and letting the president know that he's not doing well, or the poor in the church, matters of welfare, whatever it is that is fueling this desire for us to, keep talking about or talking against top men of God. We have to find a way to strike the balance between fidelity for the truth and peace. Please don't become unruly. Don't become a monster. All in the name of truth. All in the name of truth. That is not the Bible way. It is true that niceness is not the fruit of the Spirit, but guess what? Kindness is. And there is a way to say the truth objectively. There is such a thing as teaching the truth in love. There's such a thing. And at the end of the day, this is all I want to say. When you develop a culture that lacks accountability in the name of nobody is above error, if you're not careful, your worship life will be affected. Because there are some people who are so suspicious now, they can't receive. They can't receive from any man of God. Because you lack that trust. Do you know that you cannot receive from a person that you don't genuinely love and honor? Spiritual things don't work that way. Or I'm not even talking about impartation now. I'm just talking about being blessed by ministry, the ministry of anybody. Do you know that you can be so theologically erudite that When you're listening to a worship song, you can't even focus and receive. You are waiting for the next line to vet it and dot the i's, cross the t's, to be sure that it aligns, with Christology, and with 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 what the ancient um, apostolic fathers taught, and all of that. You don't have the points. But all I'm saying is protect your heart. Protect your heart. Make sure that there's still accountability. And I will just say this in passing, for the body of Christ, we need, even, listen, I'm advocating for self-governance. 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 We have governing bodies. Maybe they should get stronger. All right? Because God's will is still that we are one. It is still that we are one. God's will is still that. And then the household of God is still supposed to be built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, with Jesus Christ as the chief cornerstone. It is still a biblical concept to follow some people as they follow the Lord. That's still God's order. He gave some apostles, prophets, pastors, and teachers for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry. If all the saints want to perfect themselves because of the extremes of a few people, the body of Christ will morph into something that is alien from God's original design. That's all I'm trying to say. Think about this. Think about it. Think about it. When you hear of the atrocities of some men of God in the name of Christ, and nobody can hold them accountable, because there are some things that are atrocious, to Christian doctrines, but are not criminal altogether. You get what I'm saying? What do you do about that? Do you get what I'm saying? So all I'm telling you, on one hand, teaching you a bit of church history, and again, relating it to today, the tendencies or the potential results of the direction a lot of people are going. You might be listening to me now. You don't have a pastor, no spiritual authority. And guess what? You're not doing well spiritually. You are not doing well. You know it's true. You know it's true. Because ever since the last church hurt, nobody can speak to you. Nobody. But your anger has blinded you. You know you need someone who can pray for you, who can stand with you. You need a church community presided over by what is called a ministry gift. It's still a gift from God to be pastored. And we must come back to that. May the Lord help His church in Jesus' name. This is 100 Days of Discipleship, day 81. God bless you. We'll further these thoughts tomorrow.